Assalamualaikum and greetings to you all. This is Sabina Victor and welcome to today's live session on alternative assessment. Now, before I proceed to the presentation, let me introduce myself to my esteemed audience. All right. Okay, and I'm an educationist with nearly 21 years' experience in the education field. I'm the winner of International Excellence Award by Global Education Network. I'm the founder and CEO of Impart Learning to Excel and Grow. I'm a certified global trainer by International Internship University, India. At the same time, I'm a UNESCO MGIEP certified facilitator for social and emotional learning, that is CEL. I'm a Teach and Seek certified digital trainer, and I'm representing Pakistan at international educational platforms such as Global Forum for Teacher Educators, Global Education Network, and Open Pakistan as an alumna for Relo Pakistan, that is a public affairs section of US Embassy, Islamabad, courtesy of Evolution Igniting Potential. All right, so that's all about me. Now, I have a small warm up activity for you all, and I want you to write your responses in your notebooks because I will be asking you to share your responses through the Google uh, form. All right. Now, the first question is what words come to your mind when you hear or come across the word assessment? Number two is how many types of assessments are there? Okay, so please note down your responses. All right, and you are going to share your responses with me through the Google attendance form. Okay, now let's moving on. Now let's come to the definition of the word assessment. Okay, now assessment is the process of testing or making judgment about someone's knowledge, ability, skills, etc. The purpose is to understand students' learning in a chapter, topic, or course, and this includes collecting evidences, both graded and non graded. Activities such as discussions, observations, exam papers, reflection, questions, and presentations, etc. Feedback is provided on the errors they have been making and then provide opportunities to perform better with each assessment. And assessments help students to understand their errors, lackings, and provide opportunities to do better. As the definition from California Department of Education clearly states, it's an ongoing process of gathering evidence of what each student actually knows, understand, and can do. All right. So next, I move on to the types of formative assessments. So I have my own list of formative assessments, and they are formative assessment types of assessment, sorry. And the first one is formative assessment, summative assessment, diagnostic assessment. Then is ipsative assessment, scenario based assessment, interim assessment, and the new one is gamified assessment. All right. So let's come now first to the formative assessment and let's see what it is about. Now, formative assessment provides feedback and information during the instruction process. While the learning is taking place, therefore, primary focus is to identify the areas that may need improvement An example of formative assessments are class observations, homework, exercises, reflection in journals, question and answer sessions, etc. Next, I move on to is the summative assessment. Now, this particular assessment takes place after the learning has been completed and provides information and feedback that sums up the teaching and learning process. Now, summative assessment is the product oriented and assesses the final product, whereas formative assessment focuses on the process to complete the product. Now, once the project is completed, no further revisions can be made. This is, I'm talking about the summative assessment. And examples of summative assessment, an example of summative assessments are final exams, term papers, projects, students' evaluation of the course, semester exams, etc. All right. The third type is the diagnostic assessment. Now, diagnostic assessment is known as pre assessment, which is carried out at the start of a new learning activity to identify prior knowledge and skills of students. The purpose of diagnostic assessment is to gather information on individual student strengths and weaknesses. They help educators and trainers to create lesson plans that meet the gaps in learning. Examples of diagnostic assessments are pre-test checklists, interviews, and admission tests. All right. I can see my Impart family is here. Miss Rosina is here. Dr. Adil Ansari is here. Miss Sarina is here. And there's another learner. So, walaikum salam to all of you, and I'm glad you all are here to watch the live session. Okay, so next I move to is the ipsative assessment. Now, ipsative assessment is focused on a student's own progress and individual journey instead of external standards. Now, this type of assessment generally involves comparing students' performance to the previous results and achievements. A research led by Dr. Gwyneth Hughes, therefore, from a reader in higher education at the University College of London, found that ipsative assessments had a motivating effect on students and encouraged tutors to give more detailed feedback. They can be used as tools for career development by helping employees to identify the strengths and weaknesses of employees and future goals. Now, in the classroom, since we are talking about students, uh, in classroom settings, self assessments, that is, the self reflection, self evaluation, and journal entries, are examples of ipsative assessments. All right. Next, I come to is the scenario based assessment. Now, scenario based assessment is known as authentic or practical assessment. It is based on how students react to realistic situations and apply their knowledge in the real world context. Now, scenario based assessment is a form of alternative assessment, and scenario based assessments have it has its own importance. Number one, it familiarizes students with relevant situations which are similar to their studies. Number two is it helps students to adapt to new perspectives and unique challenges quickly. Number three, it promotes out of the box thinking and innovation among students. Now, scenario based assessments can be used in the workplace to evaluate problem solving, decision making, and critical thinking abilities of current potential employees. An example of scenario based assessment for students are simulations, role plays, and situational judgment tests. Next, I come to is the interim assessment. Now, interim assessment is known as the benchmark assessment. It is performed frequently throughout a learning period or in instructional unit. Now, interim assessments are often given after every 6 weeks, which would be in the middle of of a semester or a term. And this type of assessment has its own significance because, number one, it provides actionable data for students and educators to improve their strategies. Number two, it enables educators and trainers to make timely adjustments in an upcoming lesson. Then, interim assessment is useful in improving the results of low achievers. This makes it a great tool for ensuring that more students perform well during the course. And last is the gamified assessment. Now, gamified assessment is a form of testing that uses game design and features to measure the cognitive abilities and retention of knowledge. Now, there is a slight difference between game based assessment and gamified assessment. Now, game based assessment is a game that assesses, while gamified assessment is an assessment that feels like a game. All right. Now, this type of assessment has its own importance. Number one, it promotes students' engagement and active learning. Number two, it provides students with immediate feedback. Examples of gamified assessment are interactive quizzes and augmented reality assessments and virtual environments. All right. So, next I move to is the alternative assessment. Now, any idea what is alternative assessment according to you? Yes, my dear audience. What comes to your mind when you think of the word of the term alternative assessment? Yes, before I say something, I would like to hear from you. Okay, there are some answers over here from Dr. Adil, who says that we use this form to assess whether students are capable to going into programming and at web development, and students' aptitude decides their outcomes. And is this ipsative? Yes, it is. Next is Serena saying some of the assessment types are new for me. Yes. And Miss Rosina saying, I know about FA and SM assignments and little bit about diagnostic assignments. We refer FA. Dr. Deal is saying about simulation and experiments. And Rosina saying it means all are important. Yes, all are important. All right. Any idea about the alternative assessment? Dr. Adil, I will be answering your query in through WhatsApp. All right. Yes. Any idea about alternative assessment? What does the word alternative mean, by the way? Any idea? No idea? Anything that comes to your mind regarding the word alternative? Okay, Sarina saying, I think alternative assessment, a learner might get some choice. Yes, you have used the keyword choice. You're right, Sarina, absolutely right. Okay, so I won't put you through so much of stress or anxiety about to answer the question. I will give the response. Now, in ordinary English, the word alternative means different, substitute, possible, and another, and also the word choice. Okay. Now, alternative assessment is a holistic approach for assessing individual progress in the classroom. Now, with alternative assessment tools, students can develop new solutions rather than selecting from the given list of options. Now, it evaluates students' proficiency rather than knowledge gained. Remember this. It identifies students' abilities in the form of what they can do, what they cannot do, rather than what they already know. and it gives alternative ways to assess students' learning. It encourages learners to understand, analyze, and evaluate the problem more innovatively, creating an appropriate learning outcome. And other terms for alternative assessments are performance assessment, alternative assessment, sometimes it is called a formative assessment, and a diagnostic assessment. The overall goal of alternative assessment is to allow students to demonstrate their knowledge, execute tasks. And students will need to perform meaningful tasks that reflect a clear understanding of the teaching and the learning objectives. All right, good. Okay, I'm getting some responses over here. Yes, Dr. Adil is saying alternative assessment is like providing an environment for students to test and apply something. Yes, to apply their knowledge, Dr. Adil. Okay, then Dr. Adil is saying like a lab environment. Yes, and Rosina saying it's like plan B. Yes, you're right. It's like plan B. Yes, you're absolutely right. I love the responses that are coming from my audience. And you can see over here, even on Ontario Tech University has also given the similar statements, explanation of alternative assessment as I have given for you. All right. So, moving on, I come to the examples of alternative assessments. Now, you can ask your students to create portfolios, work with others on on specific projects, or engage in any type of activity that shows that they have a full grasp of what they have that what they have learned, what they have discussed in the class or during a training. And other examples of alternative assessments are homework, summary writing, interviews, essays, open book tests, concept map, case study, journal writing, poetry writing, role play, exhibitions, observations, debates, experiments, creating a flyer, pamphlet, brochure, composing a song, peer assessment, uh, a reflective journal, self assessment, and rubrics. So, see, I've given you so many examples of alternative assessment. All right. So, moving on, now I come to is the characteristics of alternative assessment. Now, number one, it says tailored to specific needs and abilities of individual students. Now, alternative assessments are tailored. When I say tailored, it means made, created, all right, to meet the specific needs and abilities of individual students. Now, specific needs can relate to problem solving skills, communication, behavioral management, fine motor skills, etc. Now, you cannot apply one size fits all approach or technique on your students. All right. That is why we have alternative assessments. Number two is it is an instructor led assessment process. Now, this means that the teacher develops a unique method to measure the student's abilities. All right. Number three is methods are flexible and continuously adaptable. Now, alternative methods are flexible. Now, the word flexible means able to adjust, open to change, and adaptable means modified. So, you see, adaptable and modified have the same meanings, and it's according to the situations, all right, the learning situations, or your classroom situations, or the lesson situations, all right. Okay. Then next is explores different learning styles and preferences in a bid to measure learners' abilities. Now, alternative assessment explores learning styles and preferences in a bid to measure students' abilities. Examples of learning styles are auditory, Visual, kinesthetic means learning by doing. Okay, logical, reading, writing, and some are natural learners. They are learners who like to learn from nature, from realistic situations. All right. Then we have methods are seamlessly aligned with learning goals and objectives of the course, class, or training. Now, this means that the tasks are made keeping in mind the topic, the learning goals, the objectives, and requirements of a particular lesson. Alternative assessment to is relevant and meets the purpose of teaching a specific topic, chapter, or a course. We know that the purpose of assessing students is to check the application of knowledge in specific tasks. Now, tasks can be making a project for an exhibition, performing experiment in a laboratory, or it can also mean working on portfolios, etc. All right. What responses I'm getting over here? Sarina saying many schools are assessing students on this type of assessment, especially in pre-primary level. Yes. And Dr. Deal is saying based on the students' abilities, therefore the teaching tactic will adapt. Yes, yes, yes. You are absolutely right. Okay. Now, next I come to is the traditional assessment and alternative assessment. All right. Now, alternative assessment actually has been created after seeing some of the, the disadvantages of traditional assessment. Now, first of all, the differences between the two types of assessment, the purpose. Now, traditional assessment, focuses on to measure the student's ability to recall and recapitulate and repeat information. So, you see, it is more knowledge based, focuses on what the students know. All right. In other words, it focuses on students' memory. Whereas alternative assessment assesses deeper understanding, the critical thinking skills. Do you remember the Bloom's taxonomy? The higher order thinking skills of students, that is the application, evaluation, and creation. Those are those particulars, those what you can say, the learning levels actually require even alternative assessment in order to bring out what students know, how they can apply their knowledge. All right. In tasks that are related to the real world, all right, or to their experiences, all right, not something which is unrealistic. Now, methodology of traditional assessment is multiple choice, true and false, short answer, or easy questions. Like the lower level of the Bloom's taxonomy, that is knowledge, comprehension, all right, so on and so but and there's a next level also. All right. So those are basically low level of lower order thinking skills. You must be familiar with sin board examination. Sin board examination mainly focuses on the lower order thinking skills as compared to the Cambridge. You have even the IB system, which focus more on the higher order thinking skills of students, right? Um, you know, and lower order thinking skills basically test students for their memory. Okay, so an alternative assessment is tailored to individual learning styles and abilities. Then feedback then is criticized for their lack of authenticity and relevance to real life situation. All right. And over here, I've noticed in traditional assessment, the feedback which is given is something very unrealistic, and it mostly focuses on how much students have recalled, how much they have mentioned in the paper. All right. Relevant knowledge, irrelevant knowledge. All right. Whereas alternative assessment tends to be more authentic, reflecting on the real world tasks and challenges. Okay. Next I move on to is flexibility. Now, traditional assessment is often rigid or in structure format, leaving little room for creativity or personalization. Okay. Example of traditional assessment is uh, why uh, who was Harry Potter. Now, can you see a student applying their creativity over here? No, students will not be able to apply the creativity in such a question. Okay. Now, over here in alternative assessment, it offers flexibility, allowing students to showcase their learning in the ways that align with their interests, strengths, and learning styles. Let's take again the same example of Harry Potter. Now, analyze the character of Harry Potter, okay, and what modifications would you like to bring to this particular character, okay? You are, in other words, making your students think beyond the text, the knowledge which is given in the novel itself. Okay. And in traditional assessment, there is no engagement. As such, there is no activity. It's not activity based. All right. Whereas alternative assessment is more activity based, as it involves students engaging, learning from each other, and it's more motivating as it provides opportunities for them to bring out their creativity, their hidden talents, work with their peers, and as well as express themselves. Okay, now moving on. Now, I have some ideas to share with you related to alternative, known as the alternative assessment ideas, okay, for various subjects. The first one I've taken is a skill, that is the reading skill. Now, you can use a bookmark to create a bookmark to match the theme of the last book they have read. You can ask students to create a time capsule, that is putting together a group of 5 things from a story that they have read for the week. Then you can ask students to create a business card. And in the business card, you can ask them to summarize the story by designing the business card. All right. Then is you can have a radio show or a podcast that talks about the book or the story they have read. Then you can ask students to create a recipe that is from the character that the character in a story might make. All right. Then you can even have a wanted poster, that is you can ask them to create wanted poster for an antagonist therefore in the book. All right. So next, I move to is the alternative assessment ideas for writing. Newscast. You can ask your students to form teams to create a news program about writing conventions, run-on sentences, spacing, punctuation. Then you can ask them to create a comic strip. I did tasks on comic strips brochures with my students, especially for project based learning. I have done these things with my students. And draw a comic strip that shows examples of figurative language. I did comic strips, by asking students to interview personalities within the school premises. All right. And it's like, taking the character sketches of the personality, maybe, and it was of the accountant, even the chokidar of the school, and even the principal and their teacher, their favorite teacher. And I asked them to create comic strips using the information which they had gathered from the interview they had conducted with those people. and that, the comic strip is, once they had created that comic strip, it turned out to be a beautiful story about those personalities whom they had interviewed. In the same way, you can ask students to even create brochures that explains the steps involved in writing for different audiences. Maybe you can ask them to create a brochure for for inviting students to come and watch a certain presentation, or maybe to come and watch their presentation at the assembly. This also, it involves a kind of a, a writing convention. Then is a survey. Create a survey of students favorite writing styles or writing pet peeves. Make a graph that explains the results. Next, I move on to is alternative assessment ideas for math. You can use. I had worked with the maths teacher for a project based learning approach which integrated English and math. So, and I had made my students perform a drama using the geometrical figures, role play. First, the math teacher taught them about, four types of geometrical figures, and he gave them about the characteristics of those geometrical figures. And then what I did was I told the students, now you choose who you're going to play from those geometrical figures. Are you going to be a square? Are you going to be a rectangle? Are you going to be a cylinder? Or are you going to be a cuboid? So you see, the students then, performed a beautiful play uh, for their school exhibition. And I did share the pictures even on Impart Facebook of my project. If I come across those pictures, I will share with you. Okay. So moving on, you can ask students to create a poem using one math term, such as geometry or algebra. You can ask, even do a crossword puzzle using the vocabulary from the assess chapter to create a crossword puzzle, including a design and matching clues. Then is a scrapbook page, that is, each student makes a page that describes a certain math term, combine them to provide a future review tool for students. Then a pattern, find the pattern in the current math unit that can be explained. Then collage, then is use magazines that students can cut and paste a math strand for examples. Next is for science, that is calendar. You can ask them to create a calendar, mark on a calendar paper, electronic copy the time frame for how long it takes to see changes in scientific events such as erosion or plants growing. Then a diary, that is pen a diary entry from perspective of a famous scientist. All right, like if they study about a specific scientist, then you can ask them to write, to create a diary. Whom did they study about? What did they know about that particular scientist? Then you can also ask them to create an advice column, that is, write an advice to an anonymous friend who has a scientific problem that needs solving. And you can even ask them to take a t-shirt and design a t-shirt that matches the current science concepts that they have learned in their classroom, or that the teacher has taught them. Next is alternative assessment ideas for social studies. Now, documentary, you can ask students to create an important historical event or the event which the teachers taught them. Maybe it can relate to, such as in March, we had the Pakistan resolution. All right. So you can do certain important events with them. You can ask them to do a research on a family tree of famous historical persons. You can ask them to create timeline. I've done a timeline activity with them. The students can create a class timeline as they study different eras, and post the timeline up in the classroom and add new eras as they keep learning. Then is speech. You can even ask students to create or compose a speech and recite an important historical speech. Or you can ask them to create a museum that is of the artifacts that they have learned from history. And that museum will be set up in their classroom, where they will stand and explain and answer questions from the visitors and invite other classes and parents to come and do a walk through of that museum. All right. Now, alternative assessment now ideas for literature. Since my forte is English language and literature. So first one, you can have creative projects. Now in creative projects, you can ask your students to express their understanding of a text through creative projects, such as writing a short story, a poem, or inspired by themes from a novel, creating a visual presentation of a scene, or producing a short film adaptation. Then is Socratic seminars. Now, Socratic seminars means you arrange a small group of discussion where students can lead the conversation by asking questions and sharing insights about the text. And this fosters critical thinking and collaboration and oral communication skills. For example, I did a novel, with my class 9 all level students. I did A Passage to India, which is quite a complex novel, and it's quite because the themes are difficult. And I used to always engage my students in higher order thinking questions and activities, such as I am giving you an example. What's your perception about the meeting of Mr. Fielding and Dr. Aziz at Mao? All right. Number two, you can have this Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone. Since I've done these novels with my students, do you agree or disagree that the challenges experienced by Harry at the Dursleys and Hogwarts transformed him into a strong and confident character? All right. So these are some examples. Next I come to is the performance task. Have students perform dramatic scenes from plays, novels, poems, such as I'm giving you an example, such as you can ask them to show the visit to the chocolate factory from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory if you're doing that particular novel with them, or if you're teaching your students that is A Passage to India, you can ask them to show the trial of Dr. Aziz and how he became victorious, in that trial. And then you can even ask your students to perform a role play on Shakespeare's famous poem that is Seven Ages of Man. All right. Then collaborative projects. That is, assign group projects where students can work together to analyze a text, such as creating a PowerPoint presentation or organizing themed event for the school community. Like I remember, my students, they had created, a themed invitation of Harry Potter. Like, they used all those materials to show that invitation of Harry Potter's era, and that was really wonderful and innovative, very innovative. And I was quite taken up, and I even visited their school, for that particular event that they had. It was actually a role play of Harry Potter, so they had created even the invitations, a themed what you can say event it was. Then is response journals. Have students keep a journal where they can respond to the prompts, to the text that they are reading, and they can reflect on their understanding, how much they have understood from the text. Okay. Next, I come to is the advantages and disadvantages of alternative assessment. Now, the first one says that alternative assessment offers an alternative method of assessment for all students. It allows them to apply their knowledge to resolve practical queries. Okay. Number two, it is cost effective approach for assessing students' knowledge within the learning context. It's not expensive. Okay. Number three, methods are easy to use and understand because they are led by the teacher. Number four, it makes teaching and learning process more efficient as teachers can evaluate and support students who need more supervision. And it encourages students to think out of the box and come out of their comfort zones. And the learners will identify, evaluate, and apply knowledge to generate answers to the problems. The fifth one is it is an efficient approach to determine students' progress levels and building their logical aptitude. Number six is such methods are flexible and broad minded as per learning objectives and consider the learner's background, skills, and requirements. Where we have the disadvantages, there will always be where we have the advantages, there will always be disadvantages then of a certain assessment. The first disadvantage is the outcomes of alternative assessments could differ according to the teacher's preferences, meaning to say that the results of alternative assessments can largely be affected by the biasness and the preference of the teacher. That means the teacher can change the results. Okay. Number two, it is time consuming method because the teacher has to pay specific attention to every student in order to provide an almost precise evaluation of students' ability. Number three is methods can be difficult to create and grade. Yes, since we say it's time consuming. Number four, and the fourth one is it's not easy to evaluate all the results from alternative assessment ideas as most are qualitative. Qualitative means that they are only measured for quality, not for quantity. Okay, the focus is on quality rather than quantity. And lastly, in situations where the teacher is not familiar with alternative assessment, it becomes expensive for the school then to call for trainers, provide training to the teachers, whether it is school, colleges, or universities. It is expensive to hire trainers who would make the teachers then aware about alternative assessment methods and then create tests to just to see how much the teachers have understood from those trainings. And trainers, they do charge a good amount to train teachers. If it's a 1 month training, then definitely 1 month or maybe a week, it depends on the experience of that trainer, then they do charge a bit, lakhs or maybe a lakh. Yes. All right. And after this, I come to the conclusion. Okay. Alternative assessments offer holistic approach to evaluating students learning, focusing on understanding and application and growth. And in the call to action, I would say by incorporating a variety of alternative assessments, educators can better meet the diverse needs of their students. And in the closing remarks, I would say let's embrace a shift towards alternative assessments for more meaningful learning experiences. Okay, so that brings an end to my presentation. I know there are queries, and please put your questions even in the WhatsApp group so that I am able to answer your questions, your queries related to this particular session. Now, my last session is effective classroom management, all right, which is going to be conducted this week. All right, I will let you know the details through WhatsApp. Okay, so for those who have attended the live session, I'm very thankful to you all for taking out your time to watch this session. For those who are going to watch it later on, please watch the recorded session. And I will be sharing the Google form during this week so that you can answer the review questions. And review questions are going to be created from the sessions which I have conducted. Okay, it is not something which is irrelevant. It's all going to be relevant questions. Okay. So wait for my last session. Okay. So till then, take good care of yourself. Have a wonderful day. All right. Allah Hafiz. And thank you for attending this live session. All right. Take good care of yourself. Bye bye.